as my mama's garage.
Before this video starts, I love you, Monica, and I don't want any problems. Please don't take it personal, Gunica. The 90s. In an era of many young top-level R&B superstars with crossover appeal, very few could match the star power and reach of Monica. What's special about her career above everything else is how she endures through the ups, downs, highs, and lows. The way that she was a step above everybody from a vocal standpoint in her teenage years and early adulthood, basically fooling us into thinking that she was a grown woman by sounding and looking like a grown woman from her career inception. It's pretty astounding. Moreover, still managing to stay true to herself no matter how greatly or poorly received it may be, carving a lane through raw talent, individuality, and perseverance. And with that, here's a ranking of Monica's albums from worst to first. Quick disclaimer, I'm not covering All Eyes on Me because, no. Number 7, New Life. Things seem to be on the up for Monica from a personal perspective in 2012, officially putting a ring on Shannon Brown's finger and appearing on the first season of The Voice. That bliss didn't translate the best musically, as this project's development went through somewhat of a stagnation, shifting from producers in Polo the Don to Hit Boy, and finally settling on Rico Love, all while minimizing her work with her previous producers and writers. The intention was to continue the momentum that she built on Still Standing, but the energy doesn't really translate from that album to this one. Like, at all. Despite it being named New Life, nothing about it really feels new at all. No song stands out as amazing, and the uniqueness that's present in her early work is painfully missing. There are literally no bright spots, and in general we get a boring, forgettable album. The one silver lining that I could give it is, as always, Monica gives us excellent vocals, and we get to hear her collaborate with Brandy for the first time since 1998. But even in that, it pales in comparison to their earlier magic. Though New Life is definitely a bump in the road, it was still enough to hold her biggest followers over until the next go-around. Number 6, Cold Red. After a pretty bad slip-up with number 7 on this countdown, Monica decided to refocus and devote her attention to redefining her sound. Largely collaborating with Timbaland, we get an improvement over New Life. The two have much more chemistry than I ever would have imagined on paper, utilizing a fairly modernized sound and picking dynamic, grown and sexy records. Just Right for Me, Call My Name, All Men Lie, and Deep are quite smooth and highlight her vocals decent enough to stand out. It's nice to hear that she and Missy come back together, even though it's not one of my favorite records from the two. The theme of the album is his intention of taking R&B back to a place that it used to be, i.e. songs about love and passion and layers and real music. The purpose is largely accentuated on songs like Sugar, Ocean of Tears, and I Miss Music. To me, that's the album's biggest problem, because for all of its complaints about basically trying to restore the feeling of R&B, it uses much of current R&B's trends, trap elements under pretty chords drowned in vocal autotune. The premise contradicts its content a great deal, and sometimes it feels like Cold Red doesn't know what it wants to be. Overall, while Cold Red is solid, it fails to capture Monica's original energy, let alone the genre like anticipated. Number 5, The Boy Is Mine. This album comes 3 years after Monica took R&B by storm with Miss Thang, and I personally praise her for trying to do something largely different from her debut. From the standpoint of mainstream visibility, this is undoubtedly her peak. You see a conscious effort to dress her up in every way, substituting the short hair and streetwear for mid-sized weaves, dark makeup, and lush gowns. The reinvention generally produces fruitful results with tough mid-tempos and sweet ballads. Street Symphony, Ring the Bell, The First Night, Angel of Mine, Take 'Em Back, and a pretty bomb Outkast feature on Gon' Be Fine. And no, I didn't forget about the title track with Brandy that basically has led the two to be forever bonded creatively and somewhat personally. Despite it being her high point in terms of visibility, it's hard to ignore that at times the Boy Is Mine's polish sometimes sacrifices the edge that we fell in love with on album 1. The super soft, cuddly songs don't fit her in my opinion, and it's evident in that she never made tracks like this after this album. Also, these type of songs are occasionally repetitive. For instance, on track 8 we get Inside, the quintessential power ballad that's on every black girl singer's album that was out at the time. Y'all know what I'm talking about. An alright record considering. So why do we get I Keep It To Myself 4 songs later? Pretty much the same record in name, tempo, and even subject matter. How was this even able to be approved? Despite my nitpicks, this was a great project that proved Monica's career to be viable and not a one-time fluke. Number 4, The Makings of Me. Underrated, 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 yes it is. Throughout the promo run, Monica touted her 4th album as her most personal, and aside from one that we'll cover soon, I'd have to agree. It feels like her most authentic work in that the lyrics are pretty straightforward and still tight on imagery. Some street love on A Dozen Roses, Raw, and Doing Me Right. Even some cheating anthems on Hell No, Sideline Ho, and Why Her. Monica don't play that shit. Add in a much more Atlanta-like sound, and you hear her roots in full form. Maybe it's the fact that Jermaine Dupri executive produces to give her that grassroots vibe, but artistically it pays dividends. Really the only negative that I could give it is that as much as I love every time the beat drop, it doesn't really fit the rest of the project. But it's not incredibly off-putting because of its place as track 1, so everything after it flows much smoother. The song is kind of reflective of how much of a bad hand Monica got during the release of The Makings of Me. Being forced to release singles that she didn't love as opposed to songs she and the people were behind, mostly through word of mouth in Sideline Ho. And should've got a video, damn it! Either way, The Makings of Me is still a great piece of work and one of her best. Number 3, Still Standing. After the commercial failure of The Makings of Me, Monica took time off to be a mother and use her break from public spotlight to evolve her sound. We see the work firsthand through her reality TV shows The Single and Still Standing, and in my opinion, this is one of her most cohesive pieces of art. It feels like the story of a woman that's been through it all, and no pun intended, is still standing. Its most admirable attribute is the way that she reinvents herself and gives us a much more grown-up but still hip version of herself. And the fact that she reconnects with her best collaborators not named Dallas Austin still gives you that lovely individuality from her past. Beautiful ballads on Everything to Me, Stay or Go, and Love All Over Me. A lovely mid-tempo on One in a Lifetime. A surprisingly fun retro dance track in If You Were My Man, and very powerful testimonies on the title track and Believing in Me. There's not much bad to say for a pretty good project, reviving her career at a time where it was floundering and bringing her back to the top of R&B just before the genre will go through a transitional period. Number 2, After the Storm. I know I said I wouldn't talk about All Eyes on Me, but I literally can't review this amazing album without bringing up this lackluster one. Monica's technically 3rd album was released in Japan and failed to maintain her momentum from The Boy Is Mine. Add that it got leaked before it could reach the States, and that all the singles from it tanked, and her label chose to just kill the record altogether. The former's influence is literally all there, with a good third of its content being present on the latter. Her first project in which she collaborates with Missy Elliott in a partnership that I feel is very, very unappreciated. Whenever they work together, Missy always brings out a much more fun but vulnerable version of Monica that I don't feel was present before this. Especially when you take into account that this is her first album that she addresses her personal demons. Specifically, the different partners in her life's infidelities, her on and off relationship with C Murder, not talking about it, not my business, and the passing of her former lover. Great hip-hop favorite tracks on So Gone, Knock Knock, and Get It Off. Some really great slow songs on Breaks My Heart, Hurts the Most, and another real nigga ballad, and You Shoulda Known Better. Shout out to JT.
Really didn't need the shopping sprees in LA or Melrose. Boy, if you didn't know, I didn't need the furs or the jewelry.
Also, kudos to a very mismatched but surprisingly epic collab with she and DMX. I kinda wish they'd get back together and make another song. To the point and so perfect for its time, After the Storm is without a doubt one of the better R&B records of the early 2000s. And the number one Monica album of all time is Miss Thing. Yes, the first one is the best one. The album that introduced us to the short hair and the rough edge was quite iconic. Everything about it screams homegrown. Largely orchestrated by Dallas Austin, we're given a top-notch album that feels very mature despite Monica only being a teenager when this was recorded. Adds that she's just as invested as Dallas Austin is, being that she had a great deal of control on what she's saying. It helps because you get a real feel that this is who she really is. It's also aided by songs that are rooted in real adult problems, and of course that voice that feels way older than you'd ever think. The great thing about it though is that even when you're giving that grown woman a pill, they wisely don't go out of their way to overdo it. Perfect vocals, hard 90s hip-hop influence, and a style that was a little far ahead of her peers at the time. Some of her best and most successful singles through Don't Take It Personal, Why I Love You So Much, and Before You Walk Out of My Life. Add in smooth cuts like With You, Angel, Now I'm Gone, and Forever Always, and two really great bomb covers and Tell Me If You Still Care and Let's Straighten It Out. There's a great deal of meat and potatoes. This album did an amazing job of introducing us to a real vocalist with attitude, presence, and sheer talent, and that is why Miss Thing is Monica's best album. Got any more artist catalog that you want me to review? Let me know in the comment section. Be sure to subscribe to my Mama's Garage. I'm Calvin, and I'll see you next time.